Another week, boys, and another TWAB. This week at Bungie, we're talking weapons. This is it. This is the last TWAB of the season. It's been a blast watching Guardians splice their way through the Vex network, tackle Vault of Glass, and pile up a ton of new rewards during Season of the Splicer. We have jam-packed a lot of Destiny moments since Beyond Light debuted last fall, and as we prepare to look forward next week, let's take a look back at some of the most epic of Destiny moments. That's right, guys. Little montage by Destiny there. We even had our yaw slip in there. Big shout out to our editor Luke. Now we are less than a week away from the big reveal showcase. No spoilers, but we have a tune-in page set up, and we'll be streaming on both Twitch and YouTube on August the 24th. 7 years of Destiny have led to this moment. Join us to learn more about a new adventure unlike any you've encountered before. There's that hype, man. The pre-show will be starting at 8 a.m. Pacific, and the showcase itself will kick off at 9 a.m. Pacific. Come find out if you can survive the truth. Alrighty then. Yep, guys, we'll be streaming it on Twitch, be reacting to everything live. I hope it's a good one. Now let's get to the juicy stuff. Weapon tuning. Next week's update is ushering a new season and a big sandbox update to go with it. We've already covered ability tuning here, armor and mod changes here, and now it's time to go over what is changing with weapons. Here is weapons feature lead Chris Proctor with a full rundown. So from Chris here, good day, it's Chris again. We've got a lot to talk about for Season 15, including Stasis Weapons, a rework of fusion rifles, and several changes intended to make certain weapons more relevant in the new activity and with new artifact mods. Let's kick off by clarifying some terminology. So starting with a definition of terms, some of the recent info on weapons we put out has been confusing, and while I generally like to use our internal terms for concepts where possible, in some cases these require too much explanation to use them externally. Here are some definitions and clarifications to help. Fall off. Internally we use fall off minimum and fall off maximum to mean start and end, but moving forward we'll use these externally using damage as an example, but the same logic applies to aim assist and whatnot. So damage fall off start, the distance in which damage fall off begins or stops doing maximum damage. Damage fall off end, the distance at which damage fall off ends or hits its damage floor. And guys, you actually see that when shooting, when someone gets outside of range, where you just seem to be hitting that floor. Now projectiles. We've used various terms to describe these types externally, including borrowing terms from other genres. Oops, but I've settled on these. Hit scan, a projectile that instantly hits. This applies to most weapons in the game, for example, auto rifles, hand cannons, fusion rifles, fully drawn bows at most distances. Non-hit scan, a projectile with travel time, sometimes having physical bounces and others having explosive damage and or homing. For example, rocket launchers, grenade launchers, partially drawn bows, Jotunn, and I want to say Telesto is also in there as well. Shotguns, spread angle, the cone that pellets come out in. Not to be confused with one of the other types of cones, this determines the size of the outer ring below. Destiny 2 shotguns don't have pure RNG for pellet distribution, though yes, it sure feels like it sometimes, which seems worth diving into. A shotgun shot contains 12 pellets, spread out across 3 rings as follows. The center, 1 pellet right in the middle. Inner ring, 4 wedges with 1 pellet each. Outer ring, 7 wedges with 1 pellet each. So, aside from the center, which is in a fixed location, each pellet is only randomized inside a defined wedge and angle and inner-outer radius. That makes sense because of course it still stays within its radius, but of course it is random where that pellet will be within its confined inner ring. Alrighty, some education here from Bungie. Moving on, global. Season 15 introduces legendary Stasis Weapons. And we've seen some concern about how these are intended to work, particularly in PvP. So here are some details. Stasis power weapons are in the power slot, but all other Stasis weapons are in the kinetic slot. This is to avoid overcrowding the energy slot, and so that it's reasonable to use one in match game content. The kinetic slot won't be renamed at this time. This has been the speculation, guys, that all darkness-based subclasses in the future with their associated weapons will be in the kinetic slot. Stasis weapons don't intrinsically do anything different from weapons of other damage types, but they are the only weapons that can roll with stasis perks. We generally intend stasis perks with slowing or freezing effects to have a kill trigger, and this being easy enough to trigger in PvE and fun to use but not obnoxious to play against in PvP. Wow, I wonder if this is actually going to synergize with our stasis subclasses. Now that we've addressed Quick Draw's permanent plus 100 handling buff, we see more people using the Quick Swap swap glitch. The glitch uses combinations of inputs to animation cancel, allowing near instant weapon swaps. We want the handling stat to continue to have value on weapons and don't want, for example, aggressive shotguns to lose their key downside, which is slow swapping speed due to unintentional side effects of the animation system. So we fixed the quick swap glitch. Alrighty. Well, they did warn us. They said it was gonna happen. Now it's happening. And again, like I mentioned a couple weeks ago when talking about the slide nerf, guys, I'm telling you, everything Bungie is doing here is preparing you for crossplay. It's much harder doing the quick swap glitch on controller than it is on mouse and keyboard. Moving on though. Running out of primary ammo has never been tactically interesting. Running out in hard PvE content or because you're on a tear in PvP was a weird and sometimes frustrating experience that we would like to not subject anyone to in the future. So all primary ammo weapons now have infinite ammo. Also, inertia override has been adjusted to account for there being no primary bricks. Oh, yeah, inertia override is getting a buff, actually getting a duration buff, and will now grant you melee energy. That's additional, right? Like, it's still gonna give us a damage buff, correct? How's this still gonna work though? I'm still confused. Drop max downside of reducing reserve ammo is now also meaningless, so we reworked to be a plus reload in speed, but minus magazine size. Compact arrow shaft upside of increasing reserve ammo likewise, reworked to be a plus reload and plus handling. Updated some other perks that refer to reserves in a way that's no longer accurate. See notes on Fighting Lion and Sweet Business in the exotic section below. Target farming trials weapons is much more efficient in Season 15, and we have some cool new perks for players to play with that we wanted to put on trial weapons. All trial weapons available in Season 15 now have 7 perks in each column, was 5. Now, when max power levels on weapons launch, and we reissued several weapons, we saw how frustrated players were at having to regrind their favorite roles, since the perk pools hadn't changed. Based on that, our reissued guidelines from Season 13 onwards were to replace most of the perks. Turns out that was an overcorrection, and that certain perks in the original pools had become part of the identity of a weapon. Moving forward, the guidelines for reissues will be to remove the least useful 2 to 3 perks and add 2 to 3 newer perks that give weapons some new options and may result in an entirely new top tier roles without removing the old ones. We've also made some small adjustments to weapons reissued in the 3.2.1 update to move these in the direction of the new reissue guidelines. And if you're wondering why our community managers were asking for everyone's favorite roles, now you know. So we added 1 or 2 of the original perks to each column for the Luna weapons reissued in 3.2.1, for example, the lectern weapons only. Since these can be target farmed, we're okay with increasing the size of the perk pools in this case. We also added 1 of the original perks to 1 or both columns of the Dreaming City weapons reissued in 3.2.1, Tiger Spite, Twilight Oath, and Abide the Return. Since these can't be target farmed yet, we didn't want to increase the size of the pools by more than 1. I wonder what perk it is. Now, archetypes. Note, exotics receive these changes as written, unless otherwise mentioned in the exotic section below. Oh boy. Alrighty. Let's start with breach grenade launchers are increasing as a pain point in PvP. And with shotgun nerfs, we're seeing a small increase in their usage. This change aims to reduce the ease of getting big splash damage for priming or cleaning up targets. We'll watch how things change and make further adjustments in a future update if needed. Note that we're fine with how they perform inside of PvE, so I've compensated there. So first, we reduce the blast radius by 0.4 meters. For example, max blast radius decrease from 4.55 meters to now 4.15 meters. Minimum blast radius decrease from 3.8 to 3.4. We also reduce splash damage by 20, which reduced total damage for a direct hit from 220 to 200 before taking spike or proximity grenades into account. Wow. All right. If you rock max resilience, you'll live unless somebody's rocking spike. Increased damage in PvE by 12%. Because of the above splash damage change, this resulted in a small overall buff to combined damage. That's incredible, considering most of the shots I land inside of PvE are direct hits anyways. Unfortunately though, Wither Horde is unaffected. No! While machine gun usage is surprisingly high, we felt that they weren't fulfilling their intended role in high difficulty content, ammo efficient ad clear, and secondary single target sustained damage. So we increased their damage inside of PvE by 20%. Let's go! Now, scout rifles and hand cannons have felt weaker than we like in hard PvE content for quite a while. So we increased their damage versus miners by 15%. Unfortunately, no champion mods here, but you know, at least they got a buff. Now moving on to fusion rifles. Fusion rifles have benefited indirectly from the mid-season Season 14 shotgun nerf, but fusion rifle subfamilies weren't as different from each other as we wanted and weren't all useful in a variety of content. So we looked at all the options we had for diversifying them and ended up with some substantial changes. This isn't intended to be a global buff to fusion rifles, but we expected some of these to be better counters to other weapons than they were previously. Note that we also evaluated some other options which are worth discussions. So first up, giving the projectiles travel time. We did like the idea of this behavior in Destiny 1, but our investigation found that there are networking issues with firing rapid bursts of non-hit scan projectiles, and they didn't play as well as we wanted them to. We may look at this option again in the future. Burst rate of fire. This would have meant touching design data and audio for every fusion rifle we've ever shipped. Well beyond the scope we wanted for this change, and also not that interesting of a change. Increased PvE damage bonus, such that all subfamilies have a 15% PvE bonus. Previously, high impact was 0%, precision and adaptive were 10%, and rapids were 12.5%. Push subfamilies further apart, adjusting charge time. Shots fired per burst was 7 for all subfamilies, and damage. Note that the base below means without battery perks, a charge time masterwork, or the adept charge time mod. So high impacts will now charge slower, and while still strong, require more planning to use effectively. Base charge time increase from 0.86, which is 860 milliseconds, to now 1 second. Wow! Shots per burst reduced from 7 to 5. Reduced total damage per burst. In playtesting, we found that charging these in the open is super risky, but pre-charging around corners or otherwise in safety is very effective. With the reduced shots per burst, these are now less reliant on stability, so you can stack on a bit more range. All right, let me get this right. 7 shots, now reduced to 5 for high impacts. Also an increase in charge time. This is a hell of a nerf. I know it's getting a 15% buff inside of PvE, but for PvP, this is a big nerf. Precision and adaptives are close to unchanged. Base charge time is unchanged. Shots per burst is unchanged, still at 7. Very slightly increased total damage per burst. Interesting. In playtesting, we feel that these are very effective all around without stepping on the niche of high impacts and rapid fires. I'll keep a good plug 1 for PvP. Honestly, depending on how much damage is increased, plug 1 was already the best legendary fusion rifle in the game inside of PvP. It really is, guys. It's that good. This, with an increase in damage, sounds like it's only gonna get better. Now moving on to rapid fires. Rapid fires charge faster, allowing them to be used reactively against charging enemies or aggressively when pushing forward. Base charge time has now been decreased from 0.54 to 0.46. Shots per burst increase from 7 to 9. Increased total damage per burst, and in playtesting, we found that these are very effective against shotgun rushers. The combination of them needing to be closer and you having a shorter charge time work well together. And if you have a good enough timing, you can fire 2 bursts with a rapid fire before a high impact user finishes charging their first. Well, that is true. It's going to be less than half a second. With the increased shots per burst, these are now more reliant on stability, but with the increase in damage, they're also less reliant on range. I wonder how the difference in damage is going to be per bolt, because again, we always talk about the magic number. For high impacts, landing 4 bolts to get a single kill is like the magic number. Depending on how they split their damage up, I know it says they're actually going to be increasing the total damage per burst, but that's already getting naturally increased because the shot per burst is going from 7 to 9. So the question that we have to ask ourselves, is it going to be more frustrating landing cleaner shots with rapid fires? We'll see. Parts of this rework required adjusting several fusion rifle perks and 1 mod. Backup plan's implementation was incompatible with fusion rifle changes, and we felt like the perk could use a rework anyway. So we removed the plus 100 to charge time stat and adjusted charge time multiplier from 0.85 to 0.7, now scales damage by 0.8. Oh, it almost seems like it doesn't actually scale damage down as much. Backup plan's actually getting a buff? Am I reading this right? Liquid coils and accelerated coils also needed a rework for similar reasons. Both converted to scale charge time and damage instead of modifying the charge time stat. The final effect is much the same as before, but these are now more robust. However, they won't visibly change the charge time stat in the inspection screen. All right, am I getting this right? It's actually going to be working as intended, but we won't be able to visibly see it, at least in the inspection screen. Chris says it's robust, which is kind of subjective, but does mean good. The adept charge time mod also felt pointless, and we felt like it could still be balanced against other mods if it didn't reduce damage. So we changed functionality to scale charge time directly instead of changing the charge time stat without adjusting the damage. Okay, I'm starting to understand this. But essentially, guys, adept charge time mod will no longer affect damage. And it's kind of weird. On certain weapons, there was like a bottom or a floor. Like if you were to stack adept charge time and accelerated coils, it like capped the damage off. Kind of funky. Moving on though, a note on charge time masterworks, which is the most annoying masterwork you can get. A fusion rifle's damage is determined by its charge time stat, similar to how most other weapons' damage is determined by the rate of fire stat. Masterworks can only increase weapon stats for performance reasons, so it's not possible to change how charge time maps onto damage without a big change to how the charge time stat works. So we investigated doing this by making the masterwork a perk, but this would cause fusion rifles to exceed the perk budget, resulting in bad things happening as mentioned in a prior TWAB. With the fusion rifles rework, we feel that this masterwork is more viable. It now rarely reduces bolts to kill, so may not feel like a downgrade in the same way as before. What? We'll be watching to see how this plays out and have some options to address the issue if that's still needed. Okay, well, the argument I have with the charge time masterwork is that it's pointless normally. Now you're telling me it's gonna be not as pointless? Alrighty then. Now, adjusted the fusion rifle stat order so it matches other weapons. Stability and handling were out of order. This is a big change to fusion rifles, including all exotic fusions, so we'll be watching for any major issues and we'll make tweaks as needed. Yeah, this is gonna be interesting how it plays out with things like Bastion, Telesto, Merciless, but let's move on to the exotic section, which probably will go over all of that, starting with Anarchy. The Anarchy exotic grenade launcher has been dominant for years now. We're ignoring the season, with sweet grenade launcher artifact mods, of course, being near mandatory for certain raid bosses, combined with double slug shotguns, as well as excelling as a solo weapon and for ad clears in some encounters. We like that it's a great choice for hard solo content and trapping enemy spawn choke points, but don't want it to remain part of a dominant tactic for boss damage, and particularly don't want it to be great for boss damage and ad clears in a single encounter. With this change, we expect it to remain strong without being borderline usable as a primary weapon. Alrighty, let's see how bad it is. First, we'll reduce the total reserve and magazine ammunition from 26 to 16. Oh, okay, that's quite a drop. We also reduce damage by 30% versus bosses. Now, it does state right here, champions are not bosses, but Jesus, 30%? I hope you're wearing black today, because we're witnessing Anarchy's funeral. I don't know, will I still use Anarchy? Dude, I'm not even that big of a fan of it against champions, simply because it doesn't do immediate amounts of damage. I mean, it's not bad, but the huge reason why we use Anarchy before is because the sheer amount of ammo you could carry. That's been nerfed, and now the boss damage has been nerfed. That's a whopping amount of damage being taken off by 30%. I don't know, we'll just have to see. Moving on to Xenophage. Xenophage was already top notch, so didn't need to benefit from the global machine gun buff. No! It does benefit from the damage per bullet buff to machine guns, but now has a slower rate of fire to compensate, resulting in slightly lower damage per second, but higher burst damage and sustained damage since it's now more ammo efficient. So first, we reduce the rate of fire from 120 to 90 rounds per minute, receive less of the machine gun PvE damage buff. Don't like that. Fighting Lion has always been fun, but not dominant inside of PvE, so we weren't worried about the impact infinite ammo would have there. However, enabling fast, unlimited grenade spamming was too much in PvP based on internal playtests. So we've addressed that specific case without significantly impacting its feel inside of PvE. Fighting Lion, reserve ammo has been increased from a lot to infinite. Received the same changes as other breach grenade launchers. Reduced base reload stat to 0. Breach grenade launchers with 0 reload stat reload very, very slowly. Now increase reload speed to its previous level on damaging multiple enemies with 1 grenade. We'll be keeping an eye on this, but believe it is in a good place with this change, and note that we're not going to over nerf an exotic with its own subreddit. You should be manually reloading Fighting Lion anyway. Wait, am I missing something? Was Fighting Lion meta? Am I just now understanding this? Vex Mythoclast. We were cautious with tuning this one at launch, knowing that shipping a dominant weapon that has incredible low ownership would break PvP, and aim for a balance, but erring on the side of not letting it ship too strong. However, it fell short of balance. Ownership is much higher now, and we want it to be strong enough to be desirable reward from Vault of Glass. So PvE damage bonus has now been increased by 40%. Range stat increased to be near best in class for high impact auto rifles. Really? So they actually went the other route. They're increasing the range stat. Increased the stability stat. Reworked the catalyst to grant stability and damage after a kill. Increased rate of fire from 360 to 390. Also reduced linear fusion rifle mode charge time from 820 to 533. Same as a standard linear fusion rifles. No longer loses overcharge stacks on stow except when in linear fusion rifle mode. Wow. Well, there you go, guys. It's about to be a Vex Mythoclast meta. I'm telling you, it's about to shred. And considering we have artifact mods coming next season for both linear fusion rifles and fusion rifles, which I honestly think fusion rifles would just cover this on both modes. Regardless regardless. I hope you have your Vex Mythoclast catalyst, because it's about to be nasty. Moving on to Merciless. We had to touch this anyway because of the fusion rifle changes. Yeah, it actually has one of the higher charge times. And figured, if we're in there, we might as well make a buff we've been thinking about. So we updated the perk to account for fewer shots per burst. Should build up charge rate at the same amount per burst as before. We also reduced the damage penalty for increasing charge rate by 40%. Okay, seems more like a buff for PvE, although the follow-up shot inside of PvP might be noticeable even with 2 rounds. We'll see though. Because of how the charge time stat works with fusion rifle changes, we made a small change to avoid breaking this weapon. In playtesting, it makes almost no difference, but if I didn't mention it, someone would notice. So we reduced the charge time from 0.82 to 0.78. We also slightly reduced the damage per shot. Wow, Jotunn's actually getting, well, kind of a buff with that charge time, but it's getting a nerf, and it's probably going hand in hand with the reduction in charge time correlating with the drop there in damage. Now, Bastion. Bastion feels very strong with shotguns being less dominant, so we're preemptively adjusting it in PvP. It also has super low usage in PvE, so we're buffing it there too. Reduced damage by 15%, can now not quite kill a Guardian with 1 shot in the 3 burst shot burst it fires. Ah, okay, I got you. I don't know. I mean, that's still a nerf, guys, but man, it was doing so much damage before. You can literally kill 3 Guardians in a single burst due to that 3-round volley. Increase spread angle by 10%. Okay, that actually might make a difference. Increase PvE damage by 25%. Notes, so overall around a 10% increase in PvE. Okay, never mind then. So just a 10% buff. All right, Sweet Business. Sweet Business's perk refilling the magazine when picking up primary no longer works in a role without primary ammo, so it's been adjusted. Now refills magazine on picking up special and heavy ammo instead of primary. Wow, man, let me just tell you, these buffs are hot, super hot. Perks. Firing line. We like the idea of the perk. It was just giving away a bit too much damage for almost free. Really? Reduced damage bonus to plus 20% precision damage for all supported weapon archetypes. Was highly variable depending on the weapon type. Will roll on some sniper rifles, linear fusion rifles, and machine guns, and maybe some other stuff in the future. All right, so it used to be 25%, now it's 20%, okay? Certain damage perks only affected impact damage on explosive weapons. We've updated these specific perks to also increase detonation damage, kill clip, rampage, and adrenaline junkie. We also fixed incorrect rarity on some recently shipped weapon perks. Now, VFX. Weapon VFX were all custom and some didn't meet our desired cool factor. So we rebuilt these to speed up the process of adding new weapons or updating old ones, while updating the visuals at the same time. So we updated all grenade launchers and rocket launchers VFX. Legendary fusion rifles, linear fusion rifles now have a distinct damage type charge VFX. Now for the near future, we've devoted a lot of energy to the Witch Queen expansion, and there are a ton of things changing in a few weeks. So we want to see how things shake out before deciding on further tuning. We'll be watching Season 15 launch closely and are ready to make small adjustments as needed in the first half of the season. The more distant future, but still before the Witch Queen. Linear fusion rifles and caster frame swords are still not where we want them to be, so expect some tweaks. We're also looking at underused or underpowered exotics, and we'll be taking a pass at some of them, including Arbalest, Service Regime, Cryosthesia, Malfeasance, and more. If you have an issue with spamming high rate of fire semi-automatic weapons as fast as possible, we've got something in the works for you. Priming a target and quickly swapping for a cleanup is easier than we like, and we're looking at options for building towards faster swap speeds. We've got a step at hitting both of these points coming. I don't like that. No, don't like that at all. What? I'm really getting tired of this go slow stuff. Witch Queen and beyond. We've talked previously about wanting legendary weapons to have more identity base on their source, and expect to ship a new system for this in or close to the Witch Queen. In Season 15, we tweaked exotic primary weapons to generate ammo faster through ammo finder mods. And we have another change planned to make them more enticing in hard PvE content. That's all we got for weapon changes for now. We're looking forward to seeing how the PvP and PvE metas shape up once you'll have your hands on them next week. Chris. Alrighty guys, those are these sandbox changes. I know, a lot to take in. Believe me, I'm sure we'll be discussing this even more in the days and weeks to come, but let's move on to guns, guns, guns. We're still holding a lot of these details on Season of Redacted close to the chest, including the new Season 15 arsenal that you will start to discover next week. We do want to show off some of the other weapons you will be earning next season. Next season's Ritual Quest is a rocket launcher with explosive light perk. As is the custom, you'll receive a new quest to earn this weapon and then collect Gamut, Crucible, and Vanguard themed weapon ornaments through additional quests to customize it. All right, explosive light? Anybody miss Wendigo? They're putting it on a rocket launcher though. Interesting. We're also adding 3 weapons as post-game rewards for completing Vanguard Strikes, Gambit, and Crucible matches. These will drop randomly after completing these activities activities with random rolls. Here's a sneak peek. All right, we got a sidearm, an auto rifle, and a scout rifle. Yay! We also have plans to freshen up the loot pool of the Prophecy Dungeon. We've seen a lot of feedback to bring forward weapons, original rewards from Trials of the Nine, and thought that adding these to the 9-themed dungeon was a great fit. These weapons have been upgraded with random rolls, and certain ones will drop from specific encounters of the Prophecy Dungeon. Oh my god. Dude, they're like pretty much bringing all of them back, huh? Look at that. Darkest Before, Judgment. No lie, guys, with the right rolls, these weapons will be meta. On top of these weapons, we're also updating the rule pool with some fresh drops. Here are new weapons you can expect to start seeing pop up in the WoW. Oh, what is that, Shepherd's Watch? Dude, it's crazy. I've pretty much almost forgotten all these weapons. The Dead Orbit Scout Rifle, though. Annual Skate. The New Monarchy Pulse Rifle. Now, just to level with you, some of these weapons were absolutely garbage previously. So, Bungie, please, give us some good rolls, or these weapons are just gonna be poopy. Moving on, though, to relief efforts. At Bungie, it's our mission to build worlds that inspire friendship. But we also realize the fortunate position we find ourselves in. And we believe in the power, compassion, and generosity of our community to amplify our efforts to reduce distress and suffering in the world. We believe that games can be a powerful force for good. And we believe it is our responsibility to use our voice and to support your desire to help those in need. The Bungie Foundation's mission is to put those beliefs to work. We are a people-focused organization that builds and empowers our community to improve the health and well-being of children, uplift the rights of all individuals and communities, and provide aid in times of crisis. We act as the charitable giving arm of Bungie in order to express our company's values outwardly to the world around us. And we have developed strategic programs and partnerships in order to accomplish our mission. Our partners in disaster relief, Direct Relief, and Team Rubicon are doing profound and meaningful work around the globe to provide direct aid, agility, and expertise in response to the numerous humanitarian crises our world is facing, including the Haiti earthquake and global impacts of climate change and COVID-19. We invite you to jump into action with us to develop a fund that will both support their efforts as well as help us build a pool of reserves that can be leveraged to support future humanitarian needs strategically and rapidly. Between now and September 1st, we have a few exciting opportunities to help those in need around the world, along with some incredible incentives to thank you for doing so. Here's how it works. Direct donations. All donations to the Bungie Foundation will support the Disaster Relief Fund. Donate $25 and receive the Anchor Point emblem, which will be distributed via email on Thursday, September the 9th. Oh, that is a sexy emblem. Now, as a final note here from Cosmo, 5 more sleeps until the reveal. You're more than welcome to join us for the main party on our channels, but if you have a community that you like watching reveals with, co-streaming is allowed for this event. We've been hyping this up, but at the same time, don't want to overhype. Let's just say that you should expect at least one video and someone talking about Destiny. I've said too much. Listen, we're excited and hope you enjoy what we've been cooking up. See you next Tuesday, Cosmo. All right, guys, that is your final TWAB of Season of the Splicer. A lot of changes that are coming. An explosive light rocket launcher, super hype. Vex Mythoclast getting a sizable buff. And if you're interested in all the other changes coming in the next season, down below will be links to all the light subclass changes, which is a bunch of them, as well as exotic armor and mod changes, which is also a bunch of them. Fellas, we'll be covering every bit of this Tuesday, right after the reveal. Like literally, we'll be streaming the reveal, and then right after that, we're going to be jumping into the new season, and we'll be testing these sandbox changes immediately. So thank you to every one of you who's watched every one of these TWAB videos. I know they're long, but y'all make it so much better. So thank you so much for coming week in and week out. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.